Hello, friends. This podcast is brought to you by my new album, Impending Bloom, available now on most digital platforms. This podcast is also brought to you by the new book by my wife, Cassie Walker, called Everything is Moving, available now on Amazon.com. Let's start this. Hello, Mike.
Hey, John.
Hey, how do you pronounce your last name?
Miamone.
Miamone.
Yep.
Mike Miamone.
Yep.
Okay. And where are you from?
I'm from Ashtabula, Ohio, which is a tiny town up on Lake Erie outside of Cleveland.
And how did you make your way to Chicago?
So I went to school in Indiana. I went to Notre Dame. I was a good little Catholic boy growing up. And after school, I moved back to the Cleveland area. I was an accountant at KPMG and slowly started to go crazy. And so, like about a year after I was started working, my old college band decided that they were all going crazy too. So we all kind of put our careers on hold and moved into an apartment together in Chicago, that being sort of the most central location to where we were all from. And then that band broke up pretty soon after that. So everybody kind of went back to their chosen trajectories in life, and I just kept on with the music thing because I couldn't stop.
So you have a degree in accounting?
I do, and I do not really use it very much because I don't have much to count.
Yeah, what was that accounting job like?
It was fine. I mean, I could do it. It was just pretty monotonous, the 9 to 5 with the extra hours at the end. They really kind of work your fingers to the bone in that kind of a gig. So there wasn't much time to do other stuff. Like the job itself was fine and the people were great, but it was like I couldn't do music. I couldn't, sit and watch a game and have a Chipotle burrito or whatever. It was just like work 12 hours, come home, sleep a little bit, get up and do it again. And that was just nuts. It was not what I wanted my life to be.
How did you originally decide on accounting?
I guess I went into accounting because that's where my dad started, and it was just like, hey, I like my dad. I'll try to do what he did. So I also just felt like I knew that I'd be able to get a job after college. So it was just kind of like a safe route, I guess. It wasn't like I didn't have like this passion for spreadsheets, although I do like them. It wasn't what I wanted to do with my life.
They are helpful.
Yeah, they're super helpful. They can be fun too.
So you go to Chicago with your ex band.
Yeah.
You broke up, and then what?
So the bass player in that band was originally from Medford, Oregon, and he was a couple years behind me in school, so he had another year to go. And he was like, "Hey, why don't you move in with my family in Medford, who I kind of knew, but I didn't really know that well. And I'll be there in a year, and we'll start a new band." So I moved to Medford, Oregon, with another guy who was also joining the band, and we moved into his like grandparents' guest house, which was awesome. They're super nice, but we didn't even know these people. So we were just like, hey, let's move across the country and move in with some strangers for a while with the common person who linked us wasn't even there yet. So, but they took me in and it was great. And we started a new band after he finished school. And, that was so much fun. I mean, we toured up and down the coast a lot, played a lot of college shows, and, we were just kids. So we would go down to Southern California and like run around on the beach, and it was great. And we moved up to Portland for a year, and then I think the rest of the guys kind of had it with touring after that and wanted to be more of like a studio project. But the touring is kind of goes hand in hand for me. Like I want to do the studio stuff, but I can't not be playing shows. So
was that your first touring band?
Yeah, first like consistently touring band. The college band when we moved in Chicago, we played a ton, but we pretty much only played in Chicago like every weekend because we didn't understand that that was stupid. It was like we played our first show, it was packed, and we're like, this is gonna be our life. Like every weekend, we're just gonna play in Chicago, and it didn't really occur to us until the end of our glorious summer that well, we should have been like going up to Milwaukee and playing more and like Madison and just getting out of town. And
When that band broke up and you moved back to Chicago, how old were you?
I guess I was 27 when I moved back from Portland.
And were you certain that you were going to keep pursuing music, or was accounting still in the possibility?
Yeah, no, I definitely knew I was still doing music. So I think at that point, I had still just been playing keyboards and kind of writing songs. I was always the third wheel of the songwriting process for, the first, I guess at that point I had been playing music for about 8 years in bands. So I think after my band in Portland broke up, I was kind of resolved to do my own thing finally. Like I had always written songs, but I hadn't been the singer. So every time a project disbanded for whatever reason, I was kind of like left starting from square one. So at that point, I kind of realized I need to start singing to have any longevity. And so I moved back to Chicago. I was friends with Manny Sanchez, who owns the Ivy Lab, and did our record with the Portland band. And he was like, "Yeah, just crash on our couch, be like our watchdog, and work on your record." So I hired him to do the record, but then I also ended up having a place to stay, and that's kind of where I met everybody that kind of took me in your direction. Because I met Chris Faller. He came in one night, and we just kind of like randomly jammed on. John Alvin was trying to like work on some stuff and get some sounds, and so they came up and woke me up, and they're like, "Hey man, come play some piano." So that's how I kind of met that whole crew, and then through them I met Company of Thieves and Bob Buckstaff and
So this first Ivy Lab record, that was a Mike. I already
Miamone.
Miamone.
Yeah,
I've known you
yeah.
for like at least 7, 8 years now, and I still can't remember.
It's fine. It's a weird last name.
Mamoni.
Mamone. Mamone.
That's easy.
Yeah.
That's so easy.
Rigatoni, macaroni. I got called like Mike Miamone cheese and macaroni when I was like a freshman in high school, and it
Okay.
just drove me nuts.
And so you put out that first solo record. What happened?
Um, that's such a great way to put it. What happened? Like question mark exclamation point.
Something's got to happen.
Yeah. Man, nothing really. I mean, I released it and I was playing with a couple of like a bass player and a drummer that were really great. Corey Healy was playing drums at the shows, and Brian Aiken on bass.
You put it out yourself.
Yeah. So did a couple of band shows in Chicago and then just kind of like hopped in my Subaru and started hitting the road. And I did kind of like a national run just by myself, which was super fun. Hit like a lot of the places on the West Coast that I had been doing with Delaney, that was the Portland band, and came back to Chicago and then moved out of the Ivy Lab and got myself a little studio apartment up north, kind of Edgewater area. And at that point, I was just booking shows, and then that's when I got a call from John Alvin saying that this band Company of Thieves needed a keyboard player, and they had just gotten signed, and they were going on tour, and they were going to be playing on Carson Daly, and all this like way more exciting stuff than what I was doing with my solo record. And so I was just like, sure, I'll audition. And I got the gig. And then like a week later, I was on a plane to LA with a bunch of strangers ready to play on national TV. So that kind of quickly put to an end that first chapter of my like solo stuff. It was like, I'm going to go do this thing on my own. And then I did it for like less than a year and got this gig. And I'm like, all right, I'm a keyboard player again.
And what was it like in Company of Thieves?
The experience was phenomenal. I mean, it was like nothing I'd ever done before because, like touring in this kind of DIY outfit is fun and everything, and but I had never done it on a more professional level, where the gigs were properly promoted. Like you show up to a show and they have the posters on the wall and they actually know you're coming, and maybe there's been a little radio play in town even.
Promotion.
Yeah, promotion. Like what the hell is that? So the shows were great. I got to kind of experience what touring was like on that professional level and having a team with a booking agent and the record label had a radio department that was getting them play. We were opening for bigger bands. Like first band we went out with was called Thriving Ivory. They treated us like shit. They were kind of dicks, but it was still like we were just having so much fun. It was like these five scruffy people in a van with our crew of 2 people as well. So 7 people just like roaming the country, following around this band of dicks. Like it was just a really, like nothing unites people like a common enemy kind of thing.
Sure.
Like so we just felt like we had this chip on our shoulder. And when the tour finally came back through Chicago, we like explained to the local crew, like, hey, here's all the ways these guys have been screwing us over. Like they tried not to pay us for the first 2 weeks. Finally, the label stepped in and handled that. They wouldn't move any of their crap off the stage, so we had to set up 5 people in like a 10 square foot area every night. So the double door crew was like, we got this. And we had like one night where they were like, move your keyboards, move your drums.
Wow.
That's just how it is. And we were like, yes, thank you. Thank you for standing up for us, Double Door.
So was Chris Fowler was in Company of Thieves?
At the time, no. So Bob Buckstaff was the bass player, and that's how we formed Mutts, was on one of those early tours. We just kind of were talking about music and decided that we wanted to start something, and we gave Fowler a call to play drums on that first EP that we did. So the first year it was Mike Ortiz on drums and Company of Thieves and Bob Buckstaff on bass. And then at the end of the year, Bob and the band parted ways, and then that's when Chris Fowler entered the Company of Thieves lineup.
And how long were you with Company of Thieves?
A little over 2 years. So that was January 2009 through like the spring of 2011.
And did you leave or did the band just break up?
I left after the second year. We had 3 EPs with Mutts, starting to get some good press and better shows, and it was kind of like, well, I finally did this thing with my own music, put it on the back burner, and joined Company of Thieves, and now I had the kind of like the itch to just do my own thing again. So we parted ways, and then they got a tour opening for the Wigs, which is one of my favorite bands, and they're like, hey, we don't have a new keyboard player yet. How about this tour? I was like, hell yeah, I want to go on the road with the Wigs for a month. That sounds amazing. So did that tour, and then we parted ways, and they found a new guy on keys.
Yeah, what made you want to do Mutts over just continuing your solo stuff?
It just felt like more of a rewarding thing to make music with these other guys rather than just kind of be sitting there crafting the songs myself from beginning to end. I mean, they always kind of start with me, except for Terranot was the one song that Bob contributed. But other than that, all the songs have kind of started with me, but then quickly go into the band room. And I just started to really like that process of having an idea in my head, bringing it to these couple of guys that I really love their musical tastes and the way they play, and just seeing how they change my song and evolve it, and then it becomes a Mutt song and not a me song.
Right.
Yeah.
So what year did you leave Company of Thieves?
That was early 2011.
2011, so 8 years ago.
Yeah. And so over that year, we started recording our first full-length album.
Yeah, and then in the past 8 years, you guys have been really busy, and you pretty much organize everything yourself.
Yeah, we had an agent for a little while, but for the most part, we've been doing all our own booking, management. I guess you could say we produce the records, so just lining up all the sessions. And lately, I've started to get into engineering as well. So I think, when you put out your first record, you're like, all right, now let the deals come rolling in. Like, this record is phenomenal. Who wouldn't want to sign us? And you hit the road and it's great. You make some fans, you don't make any money, you come back and it's like, well, all right, Mr. Big didn't come running with that contract and we're not playing the Enormo Dome yet. So let's do it again.
Right.
And, uh, we did that so many times and it's like you just go more into debt because the records, even we've sold out of most of the pressings of vinyl we've done and almost all of the CDs. But at the end of the tour, somehow the income doesn't match the expenses. And so you're just going further in the hole every time you want to make a piece of art and then hit the road. So I think that from now on, I'm going to try my best to actually record them as well. So at least that piece of the budget is already taken care of. And we can spend as much time as we want on the record then and not have to worry about studio time and things like that.
Yeah, there's something liberating about being able to control it all and not having to
Yeah.
compromise, but then at the same time, it's hard when you can't delegate and you have to do everything on your own.
Yeah, for real. And it's like we do everything else ourselves. Why not also do the recording? But then it's like my tool set is not as sharp as somebody's tools who are doing this every day, all day. So that's the trade-off is if I want to make something sound a certain way, I have to go to YouTube and trust some joker with a camera to tell me how to do it and hope they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, most of the time they seem to know.
Yeah, you got to pick and choose your informants, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely easier now that YouTube exists.
Oh my God. All this, like right now while I'm talking to you, I'm watching a 3D graphic render uh, for the new. We're putting out like a greatest hits compilation for our 10-year anniversary tour coming up. So I'm doing the album art, and we had this idea to call it Now That's What I Call Mutts.
That's great.
So we're making the graphic for the front cover look like the Now That's What I Call Music thing. So I went to YouTube to figure out how to do that. So yeah, I mean, there's no way that I would have any clue how to make a 3D text graphic in Photoshop without YouTube.
Right. So Mutts got started kind of after I had already left the Chicago music scene. What
Mm.
was the music scene like for Mutts? Like, were there a lot of other bands that you guys were collaborating with, or were you kind of out on your own?
I think through the Ivy Lab is probably how I met a lot of the bands that we would call up when we were playing shows. And then I think Bob, from playing in the scene for so long, had a lot of people that he would call up. That's how I met like Mikey Russell, who had a band called Sons that we played with, and Big Science. I don't remember how I met Bailiff, but we played a lot of shows with those dudes. Well, like our third EP release was Archie Powell and the Exports. We're doing an album release. I don't know if that was our first record or not, but so we've played so many shows with Archie Powell and the Exports. We're actually doing our Chicago 10-year anniversary show with them because it's their 10-year anniversary as well.
Wow.
So we're doing that at Cobra Lounge. That'll be a blast.
Yeah, and you guys used to play like pretty epic shows in the basement of your apartment.
Yeah, Bob's place. That Coach House in Logan Square was pretty legendary. Just like, one of those spots where so many musicians and art makers and chefs have lived there and moved in and out. And it's just like how much art was created in that basement. It's a pretty cool thing to have been a small part of.
Besides Mutts, you've also played on other people's records, including some of my stuff you've played keys on.
Yeah, dude, so like Bob calls me up at like 11 PM, and was like, hey, I got a friend. He's working on a record. He needs a piano part. So just like walked over there. I'm like, oh shit, that's Dan Dazinski from This Is Me Smiling. That's like one of my favorite bands ever. And I still didn't know who you were because I think I had been like sleeping or drinking or both, and was like, all right, hey man, nice to meet you. And then we're like just hanging out, smoking a cigarette, and we start talking about touring and stuff. And I was like, what band were you in? And you're like, it's called Panic at the Disco. I was like, oh, you're Jon Walker, you're Bob's friend. Okay. And it like all instantly clicked.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. You literally wrote like the melodic hook lines in a couple of my songs.
Oh, it's a pleasure to contribute to it. It's one of those things as a session player where it's just like, this song is sweet, just don't fuck it up.
Right. Yeah, you are kind of like the Renaissance man of music. Like I don't know anybody else who's doing as much of everything as you are, but it seems like that's kind of what it takes
That's
nowadays.
kind of, yeah, I feel like everybody has to wear more hats than they really want to. I feel like that's like across the board, like, because I also do website design, and a lot of these small business owners that I work with, they don't they don't want to be doing most of the crap that they do. So that's why I get to do their websites, because they're like, all right, there's one thing I'm drawing the line at the website. I will not do the damn website. So they send it to me. So it's like, as musicians, we have to do that too. We're like, all right, well, we got to do all the booking, the promotion, we're writing the songs, we're booking the studio time. Like, what's the thing that we just don't have the bandwidth for, and then find somebody else to do that.
Are you a little bit grateful that you have accounting to fall back on?
I don't know. I don't know if I could go back. I would. So when I was doing it before, I didn't know what I was missing, but now I work for myself. I set my own hours. I'm doing something that I love every day. Like, even if it's the crappy side of it, like watching a 3D graphic render for 4 hours, uh, it's like it's still like just a part of this thing that I love. So I don't know if I could see myself ever going back, even if it was like that dire. I would probably just like, I think before I went back to accounting, I would learn how to play, what's that song everybody asked me to play? Oh, Piano Man by Billy Joel.
Mm,
And then get a gig doing like, at like dueling pianos, because those dudes make bank.
yeah,
So like, I don't feel like I would ever go back to the office. I think I would just like redefine what being a musician is to me.
sure. Because I feel like, yeah, a lot of people are, once they graduate high school, it is like, do I pursue this or do I go to college to have some sort of backup plan? And so, do you wish you would have just started music right away?
Yeah, I do. Um, I feel like I'm just now hitting my stride in terms of like, I've been singing for 10 years now. I actually feel like I'm okay. Like, I feel I never used to say, people would say, what do you play? I'm like, I'm a keyboard player. And then it would come around later, like, oh, but you also sing in the band. Now I'm finally confident saying, like, I'm the keyboard player and the singer. And it's been 10, like, I'm 37. So it's like, had I started just straight out of, even in high school, had I been playing in bands, I feel like I'd be a lot further along. Um, you don't see a lot of like best new artists that are like balding. So it'd be nice to have started this process a little earlier.
Yeah, there's always there's that you can stand out that way.
Yeah, I guess Justin Vernon was pretty old when he was first breaking out. He kind of looked a little ragged when he was up on that stage.
Yeah, it's all relative, and I really don't think anybody truly wants to be Justin Bieber. It seems
No.
like that's a pretty stressful life.
Oh yeah, totally. I would settle for just eating sandwiches, confident that I will have another sandwich tomorrow.
Sandwich money.
Sandwich money for sure.
And so you just said you're doing a 10-year anniversary. That's crazy. So how many albums do you have?
So we have 4 albums and 5 EPs under our belt, with our fifth album coming out in the fall. So right now we're doing a Kickstarter that's like 10-year anniversary and 10th release. So kind of like a combo. And mainly that money that we're raising is like pre-sales of the record, because it's already done.
Yeah.
Um, and the money is basically just to go to the publicist. So to get uh, a bomb ass publicist who we actually have lined up, and we've already paid him like the first half of his fee on the credit card as usual, just to like promote the tour, promote the album, and then the album release tour, which will be in the fall.
How did you find a publicist?
So we've had several, and it's usually just kind of like hitting up your friends, like we're doing now, being like, "Who do you use? Do you like them? Do you not like them?" And then this one was like that. He works with some friends of ours. They're a band called Reina out of Milwaukee, and Vic from that band, she was like, "Yeah, you could give this guy a call, see if he's free. I mean, available. Obviously, he's not free." Um, and he's like, he's definitely gotten some stuff like in NPR and some of the higher rung outlets. So you just kind of like look at a person's portfolio and you're like, well, if you've done that, then those people actually answer your emails and
Right.
phone calls or whatever. So it's worth a shot, I guess.
Yeah, and having a recommendation from a friend is usually helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because we've been turned down by publicists, and I think that's a good thing. I would rather have a publicist say no than say, well, yeah, sure, give me your money, but I don't have time for to actually do this, to do
Right.
this well. So,
And so besides Mutts, I see you've also kind of started doing solo stuff again.
yeah, so I think the one thing in the catalog of Mutts that I would change is that I would call our acoustic record a Mike Miamone record. Um, A, because of branding, because when we book shows now, we get a lot of questions like, well, what bands do we book you with? Like, I have no idea what to pair you with. And I'm sure that that's a problem on other levels, like publicity and things like that. So A is just like separating like the electric thing into a Mutt's basket and like the acoustic piano thing into a Mike Maimone basket. But also, like, those songs were pretty much formed when they got to the band. So those were definitely more like, here's a song structure. I have all the chord changes and everything done. Let's just like figure out what the rhythm section's doing. Which is completely different than every other Mutts record, which has been more of a, I got these riffs, aren't these cool? Let's like weave them into a song.
Right.
So, so yeah, this was kind of like a move towards having something that's like a pretty recognizable thing. Like I knew I wanted to do a piano-based band that was doing kind of like a New Orleans influenced Dr. John kind of thing with horns. And I had been playing at this club called the Hi-Hat Club. It's kind of a New Orleans themed joint in Chicago, and they had a second line brass band playing on every Tuesday, and I was playing every Friday. So it was just like this really sweet timing where I met a brass band that was well versed in New Orleans music. So those dudes helped me kind of form it into a group.
Right on. So do you have any words of advice or encouragement or warning from upcoming independent artists trying to do their thing?
Oy. Uh, go all in is the first thing, is like just figure out how you can pay your bills and get that taken care of, and then spend the rest of your time working on the thing you love to do. And if you can make both of those happen at the same time, then just do it. If that's taking cover gigs here and there, you're just going to sharpen your chops doing the thing you love to do, but don't lose focus on making that original music if that's your calling. I feel like the thing I would tell myself when I was 18 was just like, don't compromise, you know? Don't don't go to school for accounting. Like like figure out who you are and then just like voraciously develop that. Like don't be a jack of all trades. Like you're gonna end up being one because you have to be, but like figure out the one thing that you really want and just do everything you need to make that happen.
Right. So don't compromise, but keep an open mind.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
Got it. Well, hey, man, thanks for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Man, thank you, John. Thanks for asking me to do this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to my podcast, Jon Walker's podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with your friends. Goodbye.